Celebrities are rallying to his cause, saying this is a First Amendment assault being carried out by the FCC, Brendan Carr, and by the President of the United States himself. And to that, you say?
Well, there are two things. First of all, I'd like them to tell me exactly what Brendan Carr did to have Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air, because number one, he is currently on the air, and to the extent that he isn't in certain stations, it's because he's not funny and because his ratings aren't very good.
J.D. Vance walked into the political storm thinking it would be just another media fight, another late-night joke, another clip that would fade by morning. But this time, the moment did not disappear. It grew louder. It spread from television screens to phones, from living rooms to comment sections, and by the time the sun came up, millions of people were asking the same question. Why did one comedy segment shake Washington so badly? Jimmy Kimmel had taken the stage with his usual calm smile, but the room could feel something different in the air. This was not just about jokes. This was about power, pressure, and the dangerous line between public criticism and political control. The story had already been building for days, with arguments over satire, broadcast standards, ratings, and whether powerful people were trying to scare comedians into silence. The uploaded reference describes how late-night satire became part of a bigger debate about free speech, political pressure, and the role of comedians questioning public officials.
But he didn't do any of those things. In fact, both candidates were pretty darn polite to each other.
First of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. I agree, and I actually think I agree with you. I actually agree with Tim Walz.
I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said. Governor, I agree with you. I agree with that.
And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agreed.
Well, Trump is not going to like that at all. You're in a lot of trouble, J.D.
Kimmel did not begin by shouting. That was what made the moment stronger. He stood under the lights and spoke like a man who knew the audience was not only watching for laughter, but for an answer. Older viewers, the kind who had lived through decades of political promises, scandals, wars, recessions, and television history, understood exactly what was happening. They had seen leaders complain about the press before. They had seen politicians attack critics before. But this new age felt different. Every word became a headline. Every joke became a battlefield. Every late-night monologue became a test of whether America still knew how to laugh at power. Kimmel looked into the camera and reminded viewers that presidents, senators, governors, and vice presidents had always been mocked in a free country. Then his voice dropped, and he said the line that changed the entire night. When a joke becomes too dangerous for powerful people, maybe the problem was never the joke. The audience reacted slowly at first, almost carefully. This was not the kind of laughter that comes from a simple punchline. This was the sound of people realizing the joke had turned into a mirror. Kimmel played clips, one after another, showing how the conversation had grown from political criticism into a national argument about who gets to speak and who gets punished for speaking. Then he turned toward J.D. Vance. He did not attack him with wild words. He simply repeated the statements, showed the contrast, and asked why politicians who call themselves defenders of free speech become so uncomfortable when the speech is aimed at them. That question landed hard. It was simple enough for every viewer to understand, but sharp enough to travel across the country. In that moment, Kimmel was not only performing comedy, he was doing what satire has done for generations, taking the powerful man's words and placing them back in front of him. J.D. Vance's response came fast, and it sounded angry before it even finished. His supporters called Kimmel dishonest. His critics said Vance looked rattled. But the most important thing was not the anger. It was the timing. The more Vance pushed back, the more people replayed the original clip. The more he tried to dismiss it, the more viewers wanted to see what had touched such a nerve. That is the strange power of modern media. A politician can try to crush a moment and accidentally make it bigger. Kimmel understood that. He returned the next night even calmer, almost smiling at the storm. They keep saying late night is not important, he said, but somehow they all keep watching. The studio laughed, but behind the laugh was something serious.
And Pete Buttigieg played J.D. Vance, which is funny because J.D. Vance, he must hate the idea that a gay man was playing him.
The audience knew this was no longer only about ratings. It was about whether public figures could handle being questioned without reaching for pressure, threats, or outrage. For viewers between 60 and 80, the moment carried a deeper memory. Many remembered when television had only a few channels and a late-night joke could become the next morning's conversation at work. They remembered Johnny Carson, political cartoons, newspaper columns, and Sunday talk shows where criticism was part of public life. They also remembered leaders who understood that holding office meant accepting ridicule. Kimmel leaned into that history. He reminded the audience that democracy is not protected by silence. It is protected by argument, laughter, questions, and the right to challenge the people who hold power. Then he said something that made the room go quiet again. A strong leader can survive a joke. A weak one needs everyone else to stop laughing. That line moved through the studio like a cold wind. It was not loud. It was not complicated. but it felt impossible to ignore. The controversy around Vance and Kimmel became bigger than both men because it touched something Americans already feel every day. People are tired of being told what is real by one side, then told the opposite by the other. They are tired of outrage machines turning every clip into a war. They are tired of politicians demanding toughness while acting wounded by criticism. That is why this moment connected. Kimmel's strongest weapon was not anger. It was contrast. He showed the difference between claiming to defend speech and reacting harshly when speech becomes uncomfortable. He showed how fast political allies can turn a comedian into an enemy when the joke lands too close to the truth. And he showed why satire still matters in a country where powerful people often hide behind speeches, slogans, and carefully managed interviews. By the end of the segment, even those who disagreed with Kimmel could understand why the clip had gone viral. It had rhythm. It had tension. It had the feeling of a public figure being forced to sit with his own words. Vance's frustration only added fuel. Every response became another headline. Every denial became another reason for viewers to watch. The more the political world tried to frame the issue as fake drama, the more it looked like something real had been exposed. Not a secret document, not a hidden recording, something simpler and more human. The fear of being laughed at by ordinary people. Kimmel closed the night without celebrating. He did not need to. The audience had already understood the point. He looked straight into the camera and said, "This country does not belong only to the people behind podiums. It belongs to the people watching from the couch, too." That line felt written for the older Americans sitting at home, the people who had paid taxes, raised families, served communities, survived hard years, and watched leaders come and go. They knew better than anyone that power must be questioned because power that cannot take a joke often cannot take the truth either. In the end, the clash between J.D. Vance and Jimmy Kimmel became more than a late-night controversy. It became a reminder that free speech is not only tested when everyone agrees. It is tested when the joke stings, when the criticism burns, and when the person being mocked has enough power to push back. Kimmel did not expose Vance by screaming louder. He did it by staying calm, replaying the words, and letting the audience decide what they had just seen. And that is why the moment lasted. Because sometimes the most powerful takedown is not a shout. Sometimes it is a quiet pause, a raised eyebrow, and one simple question that leaves the whole room silent.